The weathermen at television and radio stations play an important role in warning the public about severe weather of this kind. But keeping tabs on a storm by chasing it can be dangerous. Dave Dahl is the chief weather forecaster at KSTP-TV in Minneapolis. And one day in 1996, he found himself terrifyingly close to a tornado.
We started about 40 miles south of the storm, and we started driving north, and we had to meet it. It was about 30 miles an hour. We had to meet it, and when you start that far south of the storm, we actually overshot it, and we went a little bit too far ahead of it. And then we had to come back, and as we were coming back, that's how we ended up under the bridge.
Sirens are going off here in town, guys.
Hear the sirens? This is serious.
This is it, guys.
Yeah, there it is. Look to the left.
I got it, too. Confirmation on the wall code. What do you want to do?
We may put up shop real close here. Pull over to the side.
My first thoughts were, how can we keep all the people safe that we brought into the situation? How can we keep the people safe that have come with us, and also the people that we're stopping?
Either one of those two spots. Either that spot or that spot. There it goes. It's coming down. It's reaching down.
At that point, I wanted to run. I think even though I realized what you're supposed to do, you're safe up underneath the bridge, I really was scared. Then the explorer in me wanted to stay there and see what was going to happen next.
It's halfway down. We can't tell from here if there's debris, but it's halfway down. Big funnel. It's getting larger. It's much larger. There's debris. Debris. See the ground? Man, we are right in it. That is the tornado.
Oh, yeah, look at it. Off to the left side. Lots of debris on the ground.
It's coming right at us. It's coming right this way, guys. We're going to try to take cover up here. This thing is going to come right at us. No, it's coming right this way. It's trailing behind the major thunderstorm to the right. This has got major debris on the ground. This thing is going to do big damage. Let's go down to that ditch, but still keep an eye on it. It's passing. There's debris on the ground. It's passing over 30.
Really didn't want to be that close. We didn't expect it to take a right-hand turn. I thought that it would travel maybe a mile away from us, and instead, when it hit the freeway, it took a right-hand turn right down the freeway.
A car! Car just got hit. Car just got flipped over.
Get down, guys. Everybody get down. Get down. Don't look.
Lay as flat as possible. Don't let any air get underneath you.
Be careful, guys, because the inflow winds can get really strong, even close to this thing.
Listen to the squealing. You hear the sound? Here it comes. Hang on, you guys. Hang on, you guys. Hang on, you guys. My God. Dear God. We're in trouble. We're in trouble, folks.
It wasn't like I imagined it to be. You hear about it sounding like a freight train. Well, actually, it sounded like a bunch of squealing pigs. And it's just like the wind is getting sucked out of everything, and that squealing sound was very scary.
Yeah, it's past us. It's past us. We're fine.
Okay.
If I had to do it again, I would try not to be out ahead of the storm. I'd try to make sure that we were south of it or behind it, and I wouldn't be that close. I've captured tornadoes 3 times, which I feel is a good average, and it might be a time to call it quits, because I don't think I'll ever get closer than the storm that we had under the bridge.
This same storm complex affected the life of another weather professional, a storm spotter called Lonnie McVeigh. His job is to drive out, often in difficult conditions, and report tornadoes. But back in 1996, after 2 consecutive days of storms, Lonnie McVeigh was getting tired.
I told my wife I'd go out for maybe a half an hour and come straight back. That was one of the reasons I went to a close location to my home. With binoculars, see a movement, the cloud. I could tell it was getting bigger. But then it dawned on me that it was actually not just getting bigger, that it was coming right at me.
Tornado on the ground, west of 52. Tornado on the ground.
It was big. It was just big. felt like a little mouse with a ferocious lion, you know, getting ready to pounce down on it.
Listening to the CB radio with mounting concern was Lonnie's wife.
You could hear the wind blowing, and he said it was coming towards him.
Take cover, everybody in that area, please take cover now.
Lonnie took shelter in a nearby house with the owner and her 2 boys, just before flying debris began to hammer the building.
All of a sudden, like the windows just collapsed. Bits of glass went all around in the house. The house was completely lifted off of its foundation, all in one piece. It was just pulled straight up and thrown. And the vacuum in the basement was so tremendous that a tree nearby was pulled roots first into the basement, landing on top of her and her children. And the tree was blowing around like in a popcorn popper, and it was just looked like it was grinding them into the concrete basement floor, and they were still screaming their prayers out. I opened my eyes up thinking that I was on the throes of death, and I just wanted to see the earth one more time. And then the chimney, for some reason, floated up there for maybe 10 or 15 seconds, and the house was removed from underneath it, and then it dropped straight back down and landed across my pelvis.
The woman and her 2 boys survived unhurt, but Lonnie suffered severe injuries and was rushed to hospital.
From my waist on down, it was black. You know, it just looked like blood had filled my skin, and a lot of internal damage.
3 years on, Lonnie is still receiving medical attention, a high price to pay for doing his job.
I can't really say that I would have done anything different. I was a part of a team that stuck together and got a job done. I don't really have any regrets.
I'm very proud of him. I'm glad that he was there for those 2 little boys and that lady. And because he makes us feel secure, so I know he made them feel secure. And I couldn't ask for a better husband.
When tornadoes strike, one group of people are particularly at risk. Half the people killed by twisters live in mobile homes. And on April 3rd, 1999, 2 trailer parks full of mobile homes were hit by a storm down in Louisiana.
It was a very challenging afternoon. We had been watching a line of storms moving through East Texas that had been producing many severe thunderstorm warnings.
We were out in the yard working, and it started to rain.
It was a typical day. I mean, it was nice when I left the house. Michael was working on getting the floor fixed in our kitchen.
I got this feeling, I don't know what it was exactly, but it was an uneasy feeling, and I thought, we need to go now.
Strong storms right here along the extreme northern portions of DeSoto Parish moving towards Shreveport-Bossier. These storms may be producing large hail and damaging winds.
When I got to Bossier, I came to pick my dad up, and we went to the store to get the chairs. By the time we got to the store, it was pouring down rain.
And the dispatcher said, "We see a tornado."
The twister that struck on that Easter Saturday was on the ground for nearly half an hour and traveled 19 miles just north of Shreveport. It killed 7 people and injured over 100. Millions of dollars worth of property was lost. It hit the Hay Meadow Trailer Park at 4 o'clock that afternoon.
This storm just got up on top of this mobile home park very quickly. It was about 200 to 300 yards wide. The path of its damage was about 3/4 to a mile wide.
Because mobile homes have no foundations, they're particularly vulnerable when tornadoes strike.
This is where a lady died. She was 33 years old, and she was basically crushed by the debris. Those are the remains of her mobile home. I think this lady and her 8-year-old daughter were in the mobile home. She pushed her daughter to safety and then died as a result of her injuries.
200 emergency workers rotated in shifts throughout the night, teaming off in search parties and scouring torn-apart trailer homes and turned-over cars, looking for any survivors of the devastating twister.
All of a sudden, everybody come running out of the trailer hollering, "Tornado, tornado." And the only thing we thought of was just grabbing them kids, them 4 and 5-year-olds, and we threw them up under the four-wheel drive truck. It just went and took off. And when it did that, I took off. And the only thing I think of was my 2 girls being at the house. I figured it was headed that way, and they were at the top of the hill.
We were about to go in my dad's bathroom, but it was too big. So a girl named Sarah, she opened the pantry door. I said no, because the washer and dryer might just fall on us. So I went into the bathroom, and then Sarah followed us, and right up to land, put her last foot in, it just came. It was right here.
So at that point, I run, and I run, and I run, until I could never run no further. That was the weirdest feeling I've ever had. The look was devastating. It was just, I knew in my heart they had to be alive, but I honestly felt like they were dead.
I could hear stuff hitting the trailer, so I couldn't really hear the rumble that good, but I heard it.
I honestly believe that's the only thing that saved their life. 3 trees on one end and one that went straight through the middle. It's the only thing that saves them girls' lives. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this. It's like being back in Vietnam.
We have a lot of this stormy weather in this area, and we don't often think a lot of it. But we got a real heavy bolt of lightning, and my ears started to pop. And when they did, I sensed the compression was the sign of the tornado. So my daughter and I dashed through this room, through the living room. We ran into the bathroom. My daughter got right in front. I was right here. I didn't realize until later that the dog was behind me in the bathtub. We screamed our prayers. It was so loud. We were screaming, both of us, at the top of our lungs. We were praying. It seemed like a very long time. But then it got very, very quiet. So we picked our way out, went through here and stepped over boards and doors to the front door and made our way out. She immediately began to look for her dog. Melissa found her. Where'd you find her, Melissa?
I found her in the backyard.
She evidently found some safe spot underneath something, and she crawled out from the rubble into the backyard, and she was unharmed.
Well, I was working on my floor in my utility room. My son, he got up and he come between the living room and the kitchen. He asked me, was that a tornado? And by the time he asked that, outside, it looked like somebody took glass and sanded it, and it looked like scratched glass looking through it. I went to close the back door. I did that, and the house rose up, spun around, and fell on the ground.
Calls me on my cell phone, and he was just hysterical, and he said, the house, it's gone, everything is gone. And I thought, oh my God. First thing I asked him though was, I really didn't care so much about the house, but how are you? Where's Joel and where's Christina? Joel's fine. I'm down here at the corner. They can't find Christina. And I kind of hesitated, and I said, what do you mean they can't find Christina?
Tragically, their 13-year-old daughter, Christina, was killed by the tornado.
And he was trying to tell me she was dead, but I couldn't. You know how Mother is. Mother hears what she wants to. And I told him, I said, I'm on my way out there. I'll be there as soon as I can get there. I wished in the long run that she had gone with me or had at least stayed across the street at the neighbor's house. Killed her instantly and she didn't suffer. But yet still hoping that she was going to miraculously walk through the wall, walk on water is what I guess I thought. I thought that you see things, you see TV shows, and there's always the happy ending.
In an attempt to save lives, a system of warnings has been developed. but it's obviously vital that everybody hears them. When it comes to warnings, the people of Stoneville, a sleepy little town in North Carolina, know only too well the difference that even a couple of minutes can make. On the afternoon of March 20th, 1998, the staff at Stoneville Elementary School received a warning to take cover from an approaching tornado. But two people had already left. Nancy Mitchell and her daughter Beth were blissfully unaware of the danger. On their way home, they stopped to visit Nancy's mother and switched on the TV.
We sat down and watched just a few minutes of one of the programs, and there was no warning on the TV. And as soon as we left there, when we went out the door, the wind had started to blow, and it had gotten a little dark, like a thunderstorm may be coming up. But that wasn't unusual either.
She was wrong. This particular storm was very unusual.
Beth said, "Mother, it's a tornado, what are we going to do?" The first thing I thought of was trying to protect Beth, and what could we do?
It was closing quickly. Vulnerable in their car, Nancy looked for a place to run.
I knew that a car was not a safe place to be, but we didn't have time to get out. I told her to crouch down as low as she could get and pray. And as it got closer to, I could see the debris that it had picked up twirling around, and I ducked my head, and that was the last thing I remember seeing.
When the tornado hit Nancy's car, it was just outside the town's garage. Sheltering inside was the garage's owner, Mike Claybrook.
The building just exploded, just like an atomic bomb went off. After the tornado had passed and we exited the building through the rubble, that's when we discovered a car with two people inside, that was smashed up against the side of my building. They were my next door neighbors, though I did not recognize them at that time. They were severely injured.
And I heard somebody say, "There's somebody under there." And they started moving things off. Beth was laying on my shoulder. Her head was on my shoulder. I tried to roust her. I shook her. I looked at her, and I finally got out from underneath her and tried to wake her, and I didn't get any response. So I knew that she was hurt terribly bad or that she was dead.
It was a very traumatic experience to have to go through, not realizing until after they're out of the car who it really was.
Beth Mitchell had died instantly from a broken neck. She was just 25 years old. The tornado proceeded to rip the heart out of Stoneville, reducing 85% of the town center to rubble. Miraculously, only one other person was killed. The outcome could have been different if the school had received the warning 2 minutes earlier.
If we'd gotten the phone call at the school a little earlier to tell us that a tornado was headed our way, I don't think we would have left the school. We would have stayed there and taken cover with everybody else.
Tragically, each year in the United States, about 50 people lose their lives because of tornadoes. But it used to be a lot more, and one of the reasons it's going down is because of better prediction. But predicting tornadoes is not easy.
Currently, the most commonly used method of detecting tornadoes is Doppler radar, but it cannot really tell if the tornado is on the ground. That means 80% of the tornado warnings proved to be false alarms.
Even a small funnel cloud extending out of a storm might trigger an alarm unnecessarily. The danger is that with too many false alarms, people will ignore the one that's got it right. What people need to know is when a tornado is actually on the ground. Frank Tatum has a possible solution. He's an engineer. His job is to minimize vibrations affecting the space shuttle, and that gave him an idea.
As air flows over the space shuttle, the flow is basically turbulent. It's very unsteady and irregular. And this is like a bunch of little hammers hitting on the surface of the space shuttle. That hammering effect causes the whole shuttle to vibrate. That led me to consider the possibility that that same kind of a hammering effect would be present in the turbulent flow of a tornado. A tornado passing over the ground would cause the ground to shake. And that's really where the seismic tornado detection concept came from. We call this a snail, and by means of this device, we are able to detect and record the seismic signal produced by tornadoes. It consists of the shell within which we have the computer or the processor and the memory. And here we have the geophone. The geophone actually consists of 3 separate devices, and this is what hears the tornado or senses the tornado. The geophone actually is inserted in the ground like so, and this device picks up the signal produced by the tornado.
The next problem was how to get those snails into the right position.
Likely F5. Track is to the east.
They called in the professionals. Tim Samaras was one of 6 independent storm chasers chosen to try and deploy a snail near the path of a tornado.
Time 7:45. Snail deployed. Large tornado to the north.
He put out the snail about 2 miles from the tornado, and the tornado went right by, and we got a beautiful signal. And it was a very exciting time for us.
The seismic signal from even the weakest tornado is similar to a freight train passing 30 feet away. The big killer tornadoes produce a signal 1,000 times stronger. Eventually, Frank hopes his detector will reduce false alarms. He wants to develop a protective ring of snails around the towns most at risk from tornadoes.
We are going to be able to give the public a better warning, more reliable warning of tornadoes on the ground. I think if they're awakened by an alarm and they know that the only thing that represents is a tornado, I think they will go for cover. And I think that will cause lives to be saved.
The snail would be very useful in warning about a particular type of tornado. Those that nobody sees until it's too late. The killers that strike in the dark. On the evening of the 17th of April, 1996, Don White and his wife Judy were at home in Ogden, Illinois.
We were sitting here watching television, and all of a sudden the power went off. We were kind of surprised, and so we kind of got up and went to the door and looked out and see if there's been any, because a lot of times the power may be on this section of town, it may be off in the other section of town, but we could tell that it was off all around us.
We just looked towards our neighbors, and we could see them out in their front yard. And so we started across this way, and we got into the front of their house once we got past all of the evergreen trees so that we could see better to see what they had heard.
And the wind just, it picked up just a little bit. And I don't know, maybe it's just that sixth sense or something, but I just decided, well, we better be getting for home.
Don guessed right. A massive tornado was nearly upon them.
We just started walking, and then we started running.
And the wind really started blowing, and we felt like we were like the cartoon characters just running in space.
I stumbled a little bit, and then as we got a little farther, well, I started to go down again. I said, well, get on the ground.
When he went to the ground, he pulled me with him, and he climbed on top of me and held me down with his legs and arms and hands. And he just kept telling me, lay flat, don't look up.
Don and Judy survived, but their house was destroyed as the tornado swept into East Ogden. A mile away on the west side of Ogden, Jack Hall was outside his house watching the storm.
I had I guess a premonition that something just wasn't right.
I told the children that we weren't going to have a tornado. It was not that big a deal. It had happened before, and we never been hit before. Not to worry about it.
Everything was just dead calm. There was no sound whatsoever. And then I got the flash of lightning and seen this big cloud. As soon as I seen it, I run into the house, yelling at the family, get into the bathroom, get in the tub.
We took off down the hall, and all I heard was, I heard the glass shattering. And we jumped in the tub to save our life.
By the time I reached the bathroom door is when I started hearing glass break. And then a loud wind. And then I jumped in the tub and ears started popping.
Walls started shaking. You could hear the wind lifting the roof.
The house was completely destroyed. The storm drove the garage right through 1/3 of the house.
And they faced another danger.
You could hear the gas spewing and hissing, and my husband yelled to blow out the candle in the bathroom and run. I just ran. I ran until I couldn't run anymore and found a basement for shelter.
130 buildings were destroyed and another 200 damaged in Ogden that night. But miraculously, only one person died.
I had nightmares for a long time. I still don't feel safe.
The sort of storms that produce tornadoes generally produce lightning as well, and this can be an added danger for those who get too close.
3 p.m., a tornado was indicated by radar in Potters in the vicinity of Preston. The tornado was moving east 40 miles an hour. Preston and Ball Hill are in the path of the tornado. If you live in this area, take cover now.
On July 4th, 1998, Patsy Lester and her sister Catherine made the mistake of standing under a tree in a storm.
Large drops of rain started to fall, and it got harder and harder, and the wind and rain was just blowing everything. And I was facing that direction, and it was hitting me in my face. So that's the reason I came around behind the tree, was to block the water from my face.
When Pat came around the tree and said, "I'm gonna get around here," I decided that I would come over where she was, and I walked around behind her, and we were standing there, and that's the last I remember.
Within seconds, the crash, it was almost like a car hit a tree. The sound was just deafening. It pulled my head back so fast, and it just went straight through me. I felt it go into my head and just straight down. And I mean, you're just totally paralyzed. I could not move anything. The pain was severe. I don't know how to describe it. It was just, it's so hard and so sudden and so fast. It's just powerful. Then all I had was like tunnel vision. I could not see any area around. It was just strictly a tunnel. And it was just like looking up at the sky. And I knew at that time that I was going to die. At some point, my brother's face appeared at the top of this tunnel. And it took quite a while before I could breathe. And I kept thinking, does anyone realize that I can't breathe? And shortly after that, I caught my breath from my waist down. It was like being baked in an oven. The pain was horrible. Then I went numb. I lost all feeling. And so I remember thinking when they put me into the ambulance that I was probably paralyzed.
I don't remember any sensation at all until I came to in the ambulance for a few seconds and remembered the tingling. And I went into the emergency room saying that my head was on fire and it hurt so bad.
I feel like I cheated death.
The destructive power of lightning is not confined to the ground. High up in the sky, aircraft steer well clear of storms, with good reason.
There are 2 documented instances in which commercial aircraft were brought down due to lightning strikes, and the lightning strikes causing detonation of the fuel in the wing fuel tanks. One was a Boeing 707 in the vicinity of Elkton, Maryland. Everyone on board was lost. There's a second incident about 10 years later in the 1970s, which was a Boeing 747 in the vicinity of Madrid, Spain.
Thunderstorms are easy to avoid. They show up well on radar and pilots give them a wide berth. So what happened? Well, sometimes it seems that lightning can strike when it's least expected.
The second manned landing on the face of the moon.
It was 5 p.m. on the 14th of November 1969. Apollo 12 was about to take the second manned mission to the moon. It was raining that day, but there were no storms in the vicinity, so the rocket was cleared for takeoff. All went smoothly, but 36 seconds in, a lightning bolt struck the rocket.
I don't know what happened here. We had everything in the world drop out. I'm not sure if you get hit by lightning.
The lightning strike erased all the guidance information in the spacecraft's computers. Fortunately, the rocket was able to reach Earth orbit safely, where the astronauts managed to repair the damage.
We've had a couple of cardiac arrests down here too, Pete.
But what no one could explain was where that lightning bolt had come from. It was to answer this question that NASA began an urgent research project. Braving turbulence that could rip the wings from an airliner and giant hailstones that can literally batter a plane out of the sky, test pilot Bruce Fisher went out in search of lightning strikes. An onboard camera captured what happened.
It was one of the very early strikes that we had where it struck the nose boom, as many of our lightning strikes did, and it then swept up over the top of the windshield, down that metal bar that was over the top of our heads in the canopy. And I could just happen to look up, and I could see helical chunks of plasma as the lightning channel broke apart as it flew back over the top of my head.
The results of these flights showed that lightning would flow through the plane's metal skin, flashing unpredictably from wing to tail to fuselage. They also revealed something totally unexpected.
We found that aircraft trigger lightning strikes. You just don't intercept naturally occurring lightning. You actually trigger lightning strikes 95% of the time.
If that's the case, then avoiding thunderstorms simply isn't enough. Planes must be built to survive lightning strikes. Those 2 accidents in the 60s and 70s were both caused by lightning detonating the fuel tanks. Avoiding this was a top priority.
At that point in time, commercial aircraft worldwide started looking for a safer fuel. And they now use this fuel, which is referred to as Jet A, which the military calls JP5, with different mixtures, JP8. It's a far safer fuel, has higher flash point. That is the temperature at which you can get a detonation of the fuel, get a flash.
Changes were also made to aircraft electronics and guidance systems to help them avoid damage from the discharge. The result is that today's aircraft are extremely safe, even in the event of a lightning strike. But that's so only because of pilots like Bruce Fisher, who flew into the electric eye of the storm.
We are still... the aircraft, no triggers. That was a nose boom strike. 3, 2, 1, and liftoff.
The first time you see one, you're not suspecting it. The most impressive part is when you see it on the dark side, when the Earth is not lit by the sun. It's completely dark down there, and it flashes at you like a photography flash, very, very suddenly, and it's very spectacular. You get one lightning flash in one location, and then another one randomly generated by another part of the storm in another location. The lightning flashes range in the order of hundreds of miles apart. You could be very close or to maybe even 4, 5, 6, 800, 1,000 miles apart.
Down on the ground under...
And it was moving so slow. It was just barely moving.
There were 3 funnels when I looked up, 3 small ones, and they all went together and made one huge tornado.
In the afternoon of May 27th, a deadly tornado touched down. It was to leave a trail of destruction. As the tornado approached, Al Clausen drove rapidly away from his home.
It's coming right from that away, coming towards us, and after about the time it got to 305, well, it started turning. It got about middle ways of this field, and then it started going due west.
I've always heard that if you don't see a tornado moving, that it's coming towards you. So I knew it was definitely coming in our direction. So I went inside and told my husband, it's here. So my daughter, she was pretty scared already. She had already gotten into the bathtub. We took cushions from our couch and put those over our head. My daughter got in first, and then I got in, and my husband was on the bathroom floor because there wasn't room for all 3 of us to get into the bathtub.
Minutes later, an F5 unleashed its fury on Jarrell, with winds of more than 250 miles an hour.
The particular day of Gerald was one of those eerie sort of days in Texas Springs. It was very, very hot, very, very humid. We had 7 tornadoes pop up basically on a cold front that was moving southwards across our part of Texas. The first one went up at about 1:15, 1:30 in the afternoon, and the Gerald tornado, the last one of the 7, which was basically, they were all back building, and then the last thunderstorm became a supercell. That spit out the F5 tornado that went through Gerald.
Twisters of this intensity are fairly rare in central Texas. This supercell tornado gouged a deep scar out of the landscape, 5 miles long and half a mile wide.